好，大家午安，大家午安好。那谢谢大家来参加这个研讨会。那我先介绍我们的 speaker 哈。Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to introduce the speaker for the first section, Dr. Matsumoto. Dr. Matsumoto is currently is the associate professor in Department of Physical Education, College of Humanities and Science, Nihon University. She is an expert in probiotics. I think in this field is new for not only for medicine but also for the sports science. So she would give us some guidelines or give us introduction about the athlete's guide to probiotics. Let's welcome Professor Matsumoto.
Thank you for inviting me to this conference, and I thanks for Dr. Kuo and conference committee. Today, I'd like to talk about athlete's meat. Especially intake of probiotics and its necessity. I usually perform a nutritional support for the student athletes at the university, especially team support for martial arts such as judo and wrestling, athletics, and triathlon. I'm also involved in the support for national team of ski jump. In the field of research, I'm studying the health of large intestine. Among the various problems athletes have, I often support the breaking gastric intestine. When the athletes break the gastric intestine, they can't exert the proper performance. In case of that, we detection have to introduce the guidance of a special meal. Athletes are often suffered from the gastric intestine. For example, diarrhea and constipation caused from various reasons. Also, it depends on the competition, especially long-distance male runners, such as a marathon, has been reported to be frequently urged to have a bowel movement or caused a high frequency of diarrhea. On the other hand, the higher frequency of constipation is occurred in mainly female athletes of ski jumping, which is demanded the strict weight control and aesthetic-based competition, including this rhythmic gymnastics, figure skating. This slide shows that results that frequency of 30 types male athletes complain the gastric intestine in my Nihon University. As you can see, long-distance runner explain the gastric intestinal symptom in training and competitive events. It's higher prevalence, 57% and 49% than other sports player. For example, long racing bicycle and badminton, volleyball, and fencing, and wrestling. The everyday diarrhea was more frequently in comparison with other players in the long distance runner. The cause of diarrhea and loose stool occurring in the distance athletes is believed to have the influence of the vibration of the ball. Due to long-term learning in the survey of the long distance of Nihon University, a long distance team, Nihon University, the higher the monthly mileage, the higher a monthly mileage is, the higher the frequency of diarrhea and the loose stool are. Furthermore, we know that it related also to the trouble of body trunk, like a low back pain. In long-distance runners and athletes or men, the abdominal symptom is likely to occur. So it's important to make them keep in mind that advice of food and prevention. Although there are many causes of constipation in the case of athletes, main cause is hard to form a normal stool due to the influence food intake for the weight control. It also observed that they don't ingest the required amount of dietary fiber and water. This is the result of, This is the result of comparing the amount of nutrition intake between the normal player and the female athlete with frequent constipation. This showed that in the latter, the dietary fiber and the dairy products, dietary fiber and the other dairy products intake as a source of probiotics. It's as a dairy product is lower than that of the former. Due to the many physiological and physical stress, athletes also often repeat diarrhea or constipation from malfunction of the automatic nervous. Again, it is important to adjust the condition of the gastric intestine. Recently, the relationship of intestinal bacteria and probiotics has come to be known well. Lactic acid bacteria, it's lactobacillus, and bifidobacteria improve the microflora. Consequently, the change improves the diarrhea and constipation. The proliferation of lactic acid bacteria and bifidobacteria induce lowering intestinal pH, decreases in the growth of putofactive bacteria and the promotion of peristaltic motion. Dietary fiber and oligosaccharide are referred to as probiotics. It will be food for probiotics. For athletes, it's important to ingest not only yogurt or fermented food, which is a source of probiotics, but also the prebiotics. Okay. Large intestine are constantly exposed to pathogenic bacteria and viruses. These substances enter the body from the intestinal mucosa. There is a danger that causes infection. For this reason, in the intestinal mucosa, it has been equipped with a barrier function. As one of its functions, there is IgA antibody that is secreted from the intestinal mucosal cells. Recently, it has come to be known that the secretion of IgA antibodies is promoted by the stimulation of immune function of intestinal mucosal cells by lactic acid bacteria. Secreted from of IgA is secreted not only in the large intestine, but also in the upper digestive tract, such as the oral cavity. When the IgA secretion in the intestinal tract is reduced, the amount of IgA secreted into saliva is also reduced. Finally, it has found to cause upper respiratory tract infections, so-called catching a cold. The amount of IgA in the saliva of patients with cold is reported to be low from 1 week. 1 week before. If the amount of salivatory IgA secretion is reduced, athletes will be suffered from a cold. Furthermore, it will cause the break of the condition. In fact, it has been reported that high-intensity exercise is in some competitions reduced IgA secretion. In addition, it found that the intestinal barrier function is declined by high-intensity running. However, how much physical activity decreased IgA secretion and how much lipase after the decreased virus infection occurs? So far, it has not been known very well. I would like to show you the investigation that the change of salivary IgA secretion in conditioning for the actual match as the triathlon of Nihon University. First of all, the competition called triathlon, especially in the Olympic Games, is composed of 1.5 kilometer swimming, 40 kilometer of bike, and 10 kilometer running. They are continuously performed. So this competition is the exercise for about 2 hours at full power. This is one of the competition that requires the most endurance. The amount of daily practice is very high. In addition, it also likely causes the gastric intestinal symptom by running. Furthermore, in endurance-based sports, such as triathlon, to exhibit the highest performance in the match, athlete performance the adjustment method of peaking 1 to 3 weeks before the race. In detail, peaking is composed of one's intense training and conditioning, which is reduced the amount of training. Hard training at this time might be one of cause that athlete becomes ill just before the race. This slide shows the daily amount of physical activity every 1 week during 4 weeks before the race. The amount of training is represented by METs, as the sum of swimming, biking, and running is 40 triathletes. In this result, the average value at a week from 3 to 2 weeks before the race is the highest. The 40 athletes are composed of 8 triathletes of more than 1,000 kilocalories of daily physical activity, and 32 triathletes of below 1,000 kilocalories in the 2 weeks before the race. At 2 weeks before the race, subjects are divided into the high and low amount of the physical activity as a result compared with 4 weeks before and 1 day before. The race, the amount of salivary IgA of the former athlete at a day before the race has decreased. It decreased. This phenomenon may be the cause that athletes catch cold before the game. About these results, there are some speculations. Intense training is likely to induce ischemia reperfusion of the intestine. It is possible to lower the barrier function and IgA secretory function of the intestine. In athletes performing peaking, the amount of SIGA secretion are reduced for over 2 weeks. It was not recovered by the match. Certainly, peaking is necessary to expect the auto recovery of the lung and heart function and muscle and endurance. However, intestinal barrier function and immune function are lowered by peaking. Thus, it's important to prepare the intestinal environment. Taken together, the athletes of competition to perform peaking should prepare microflora and immune function, for example, by ingesting probiotics before the game. Sports nutritionist or sports dietitian should advise from the point of view of diet to prepare the intestinal environment for athletes' conditioning. Especially, we should promote the probiotics intake at the peaking period or the time of intense training. So it's important to consider what kind of food or probiotics is suitable for the athlete, and it is necessary to catch the good information about the product with a variety of special features, which have been recently advertised. Furthermore, we should select probiotics food which athletes can easily ingest and make the menu with the calorie intake adjusted in consideration of the weight control. In conclusion, in the future, if the relationship not only between the salivary IgA secretion and cause morbidity, but also between changes of microflora and the amount of physical activity become clear, the knowledge will help to keep condition and exert the best performance for various athletes. That's all. Thank you for paying attention.
Okay, 那我翻译一下他的结论的部分。那他说，高强度训练很有可能降低肠胃道功能以及免疫系统的功能。那所以呢，训练前调整肠胃道环境是很重要的事情。那他说建议高强度训练前大概1个礼拜开始摄取对肠胃道好的微生物，然后调整肠胃道的菌相，以及提高免疫系统的功能。谢谢。
Okay, first I'd like to thank Dr. Koo and the organizing committee for the invitation here to Taiwan. I've been here several times, but it's the first time I'm down here in the beautiful south. My talk will be about caffeine, and I will present some of the data we have made in Oslo, where we show that caffeine is efficient to improve performance in quite a different type of sports. So first of all, caffeine, most of you have caffeine every day, and here in Taiwan, you'll get most of it from tea, but you can get it from coffee, and you can get it from chocolate. And caffeine is this small molecule here, which is the active compound. I'll tell you a little bit about the mechanism of actions and how you get it. So first of all, I would say caffeine is legal to use in sport, and it has not always been so. Long time ago, it was considered as doping, and you say one of the reasons it is considered as doping is that in fact it works. It improves performance under many conditions. It was taken out of the doping list because a lot of people use caffeine. And it was also taken out of the doping list because when it was on the doping list, the amount in the urine would be something like 12 milligram, and that concentration is extremely high, much higher than what is required to improve performance. So this high concentration is not really necessary to use to improve performance. But you see, you get it in coffee, and you can get it into tea. But all our research is done, we just buy caffeine powder. Or if you will make it easier, you can buy caffeine tablets. And one of the reasons is that in coffee, you have something like 1,000 known compounds. And some of these compounds might not be beneficial for performance, and some people do not at all like coffee. So it is the caffeine, the small molecule that is the effect, and we use caffeine powder. And if you should do it in sport, I'll recommend that you, if you don't have the powder, you'll just buy some of the tablets. It has been known for many, many years that caffeine can improve performance. The first report was all the way back in around 1907, but in 1978 and 79, Costill and his group showed, the first time they showed was that if you take caffeine, you can bike longer, you can improve performance, you prevent the development of fatigue. They put people on a bike at 80% of VO2 max, and they were riding, and they rode 90 minutes with caffeine and only 75 minutes with placebo. And 15 minutes, I think that's really quite a big difference. They did another study where they did a time trial, and here it was to do as much work as they could in 120 minutes, 2 hours, and again, they saw that they could do more work with caffeine than they could with placebo, or if they got carbohydrates. So this was the first report, like in endurance sport, that caffeine could improve performance. Caffeine is a small molecule. I put this up because I teach biochemistry, so you can dissolve it in water, not so much. You can dissolve it in ethanol, but what it is a little bit lipophilic. So if you drink it or you take it, it is spread all over the body. It goes through the brain barrier. It goes into the cell through the cell membrane. So it works in the brain, in the motor center. It works in the muscle, and it works all over your body. When you read about caffeine, there has been done a lot of studies. And a lot of studies you do what we call in vitro. You study cells, or this is the system we do, muscles in vitro. But when we use our concentrations there, we normally use really high concentrations. And if we will give these high concentrations to humans, they will die. So, so some of the effects you can find in vitro studies may not really be working in vivo. And also some of the mechanism to understand why it works in vivo has really been hard to understand. This does some data we have from our lab where we show that, that in these muscles that insulin stimulates glucose uptake, but if you add insulin and combine with caffeine, then you can prevent glucose uptake. And the reason is that the signaling from insulin to stimulation of glucose uptake is paired by caffeine. This was high concentration. This was up in 10 millimolar. And this is some concentrations you will get in your body if you add some caffeine. If you take 3 milligram per kilo body weight, or 6 or 9, you will end up in concentration about 10, 20 micromolar, 40 or 60